Okay, on the table I have the Honda CBX Alternator all disassembled. So we have to kind of rebuild a lot of the systems on this. We have to do a lot of checks on it, and we have to address a couple issues that are inherent with how these things are made from the factory. So yeah, you guys did see the alternator housing. I have already painted this, so of course we painted the engine. Now what I'll show later in the video is actually disassembling them and replacing the bearings within each end. Not too hard of a job. We also have to actually work on the rotor itself. So we're gonna go ahead and clean up the slip rings. We have to measure the resistance across them, make sure we're in spec. And then we have already cleaned the actual stator. And I wanna go a step further here. I need to actually replace the brushes, and then I want to also check the terminals on the end of this thing to make sure they're not corroded. But the big thing is actually gonna be the alternator clutch plates. Now from the factory, these things have a machining defect in them where they're not completely flat across this plane. And what happens is they actually wear on the outer edge of the surface instead of the entire surface. So there's a lot of information out there as far as maybe how they should work. There's maybe a difference in opinion on how they work, on how they should work, whether it's just a breakaway clutch where it's designed to just slip a little bit on occasion, or if it's like slipping like a regular clutch. So I'll be sure to put some links in the description as far as like some things you can read up on. There's some people that offer a service for rebuilding these or actually putting a different surface on these altogether, which is pretty cool. That's the Super Sport Shed. But we'll talk more about this as we go along. But you notice I have two sets here. This set here actually came out of the parts bike that I recently bought. The thing had 7,000 miles on it, was sitting in the woods for like 30 years. So these clutches are in much better shape than the ones that came out of this bike, which are actually blued from all of the heat. And that is because this little orifice that feeds oil to these plates from the primary shaft was blocked. So there's just a lot of little issues here that can cause these things to fail or work sub-optimally. So anyway, my main goal today, I have some time, my arms are feeling strong, is we're going to actually resurface these things. So let me kind of show you my setup here. So on my bench, I have a nice piece of faux granite I got from a local supplier. You notice how freaking long it is. That's because I'm going to actually do the cylinder and the head on this thing just to kind of check the surface. So to resurface these things, from my reading, a lot of people maybe start out with 50 or 80 grit and they work up to maybe about 100 grit. I have some 80 grit paper. We're gonna 3M tack this down to the granite, and then we're just gonna be doing figure eights. So we'll time lapse that. I'm sure it'll look hilarious. But the mission is to get a completely flat wear surface on this, on both plates. So that's my main mission right now, and then we'll turn our attention to the actual rotor. We'll measure up some springs and everything and just go from there. Get low on denatured alcohol. Oh, it's on my hand. Okay, after not too much work, but some, the B side is looking really nice. So I could probably go a little bit further, but realistically that is good enough. So now I'm going to turn my attention to the A side. And this looks really bad on camera, but it doesn't feel too bad. So you can definitely see where it was making contact basically just on the inside, which is kind of opposite of what I was expecting, where it usually be on the outside. But anyway, we will quickly see. So this thing is finally looking really good. I can still see a faint evidence of a mark here and right here. But I've been working to keep even pressure on this and try to wear it in as even as I can feasibly do. So that's enough for this 80 grit. I'm going to finish it off on something a little lighter. So this is 120 grit, probably a little lighter than I need to go, but I don't have 100. So this will have to be fine. Seems good to me. Okay. So after resurfacing, the next step is actually to chamfer the edges here. So you just want to make sure you clean everything up. For this, I'm using a Dremel with a stone wheel to kind of get my initial kind of cut in there, and then I just went back with a hand file and just cleaned up any edges I could. So pretty simple, but very necessary. My next focus was actually replacing the bearings and seals on the inner and outer housings. I didn't actually capture the disassembly portion on film, but with enough heat and the right touch, you can actually get the bearings out with relative ease. And then assembly is just the reverse of disassembly, so we apply some heat here, and the bearings nearly fall in. It did take a little bit of tapping on the outer cover, but that was okay. Like everything else, the alternator rotor is a very important piece of the puzzle, and I need to get the copper slip rings cleaned up before we test them. So of course I just chucked it in the lathe, hit it with some contact cleaner and some Scotch-Brite to get a nice working surface, and then we can go ahead and test it. Now the resistance between the copper slip rings needs to be a certain amount, because this is what helps create the electromagnetic field to actually power the charging system in general. So this is a very important part. So now we're going to actually measure the rotor, and for this we're looking for a difference in resistance between the two slip rings here. The slip rings are what the brushes ride on. .6. So the target here is between 3.5 and 4. So this one's a little bit on the lower side of the scale, which is okay. It should be fine. But we can replace this if we need. We're not even going to remove it from the shaft right now or anything like that. So we'll be good there. Now next up we're going to do a continuity check on this. So we're going to be measuring between all 3 yellow wires and just looking for a specific resistance there as well. 0.3 to 0.4 ohms. And that's just going yellow to yellow in each set. 0.5, 0.4, 0.5, 0.4, 0.3. So we are good there. Now we are measuring through potentially dirty contacts right now, so I'm going to de-pin this and we're going to make sure it's all cleaned up. Well, crap. Fought with that enough, and the terminal is stuck in here. It is a permanent fixture, which honestly has not happened to me before. But luckily, I have replacements. So I save these from every bike I do. If I strip a wiring harness down, I will de-pin everything, and I always save these connectors. So we're going to go clean this one up. It's the exact same. And we will continue. That sucks. Well, we're going to keep moving forward, so I'm going to remove the brushes. Just have a little brace here so we can crack these screws loose. This one is almost to the wear mark. Oh my gosh. And that one's way past. Not much left there. So luckily I have some brushes from Rick's here. So the parts hoard provides. I really like this stuff. Gunk foam. Well, while we have the terminals out of this thing, I'm going to go ahead and recheck the resistance. So we're going yellow to yellow. 0.4. 0.4. 0.4. I'm going to call this one good. I'm going to go ahead and clean up these two terminals here. Then we're going to install this actually into the cover, and then I'll take care of these later on. Okay, this is looking good. Alright, we're going to get started with inserting the brushes. Go ahead and get this snap back in place. Okay, now we can actually insert this into the alternator housing. So in case you didn't know, the rotor will go in upside down. The brushes we just installed will contact the slip rings. All right, it's time to go ahead and put on the B side of the clutch. So I've got some grease in there. Just gonna throw a little bit on here. And then of course on the inside for that O-ring. Set that on there. Alright, there's no slack in that. That's 29 foot-pounds. Feels good. Okay, now we're ready to marry these things. Now Old habits die hard. I have a little bit of Permatex right there. Not super excited with how much that gasket hangs out, but that's what we have. I'm really not a fan of this gasket. I'm not gonna lie. That feels good. Gonna do an initial torque of like 50 inch-pounds. Definitely don't want to go too high on this. Okay. That is one assembled alternator. Sure looks good. All right, so we're getting ready to put the alternator actually on the engine. And so what we have to do is we have to set up our A clutch. And on this we have our nylon spacer, and then we're going to have a factory shim. And then normally you would have your spring and then your spring guide. And that is your assembly there. Now, from what I understand, the original length of the spring is like 31 millimeters or something like that. And if you get below 28, you have to replace it. But from what I've seen, 29.5 mil, you shim it and it should work fine. So both of these springs are at 29.5. This one's more like 29.45. So we're gonna go with this one, which is pretty much dead on the money. But we are going to shim it. Now for this, I went ahead and picked up two machine bushings. So we have one at 1.8 mil and one at 1.2. So some of the pros, they talk about a 1.5 millimeter shim. I'm gonna go with the 1.8 because we have a worn spring and we have taken material off of both clutches. So I'm gonna go ahead and just throw the thick washer in it. So our setup is gonna be as such. We have our nylon spacer. We have the factory shim, we have our 1.8 millimeter spacer, we have our spring, and then we have the top. So that is how we're gonna do it. Let's get this in the bike. Now, if you're really eyeballing the table, you know the math doesn't math, and I have 3 of these washers. Now, I actually found this one in the oil pan of that bike, and looking at it now, I can see exactly how it would have dropped in. So that was definitely an Easter egg in there, and now I have an extra. Now the next step for this is actually to coat this in some moly grease. So this is some Loctite 8012, 65% straight moly. This is almost like M77 paste. And this is critical for that initial break-in, so to speak. Okay, I've also got a new O-ring right there, or a new seal, I should say. Well, that was quite a job to make sure this thing was done correctly. We are going to continue this in another video. I will, of course, trim the ends of this, route it where it needs to go. There's just still a lot of things left to do with this engine, but at least that is on, and I am confident in those alternator clutch plates. Not a big fan of that gasket, as I said. It sticks out a little far. That's always something I could change in the future, but now it's on, it's done, and we can move on to other things on this bike. Now be sure to check the description. I'm gonna put a few links in there that are all about rebuilding these alternators, and as well as some just general information about them. Because again, there are maybe mixed opinions on resurfacing these, whatever. I did it my way, and if you guys don't wanna do it this way, that's fine, but I just took the information that I found and I applied it to what I'm doing. So I'm confident in it, but yeah, choose your own path on that one. But anyway, hopefully we'll have another CBX video before too long. We have a lot of cool content in the shop right now. So yeah, be on the lookout there. But if this is your first time here, definitely go back and check out the playlist on this bike. And I'm sure you'd like some other videos on the channel too. So subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.